Here is my response to Deconverted Man. He speaks of a fair and speedy trial, and why a just creator should have executed judgment before wickedness happened. Unfortunately, free will is the reason this doesn't happen. For true justice, we need free will. Free will means to infringe on another individual. This is why justice has to happen after we die, since it cannot be done while we have free will. So long as there is proper recompense, there is no issue with this. Your main issue here is that you don't afford the ability to administer proper justice. By saying it is being done later instead of now, your assumption appears to be that the delay cannot also be properly factored into the judgment and recompensed accordingly. You then speak of other religions, in that the more good you do, the more up you go, and the more bad you do, the more down you go. That is one way of judging, but it doesn't really get to the heart of justice. There has to be a purpose for justice, an ends to the means. One who chooses to do evil is fundamentally different than one who chooses to do good. Individual acts don't necessarily define the individual, they are a statement, but not necessarily a definition. One who seeks to do good, yet slips up at times, isn't defined by their misdeeds. There is no point in punishing them when they are already repentant. Similarly, one who sets their heart on evil shouldn't be rewarded for their good deeds, since their good deeds don't define them. As such, it is much more suitable to reward and punish an individual based on the intent of their heart, which the actions serve as a testimony for. You make the next point. One who does good for the reward doesn't really count. This is a partial testimony. All actions should be factored in, including the intent of their heart. But really, why should it not? We can sow for this life, or we can sow an expectation for the next life. Whether we choose patience or immediate gratification warrant different rewards. I don't really claim to have a clear understanding on the details of exactly how judgment happens. Neither do I think anyone truly does. Nevertheless, when you ask whether the outward matters more than the inward monologue, I would present it as qualifications to be in a utopia. In this context, the intent of the heart is more important than the outward actions, but outwardly acting for your own benefit shouldn't be considered a bad thing, so long as we do it without harming others in the process. Truth is defined by consistency. If we want consistency, we need to do unto others the same as we would have done unto us. In that context, one who pursues their own benefit should also pursue the benefit of others, and anyone who neglects others would be forfeiting their own reward. You then note that I can say a perfect justice, but unless I can describe it, it is meaningless. Well, we have the capability to understand certain parts of it. Within our limited scope of understanding, we can determine a few things. True justice also factors ignorance in, however, differentiating between intentional and unintentional ignorance, while factoring in laziness and diligence. In that case, we also need to trust the administrator of justice to understand our own lack, and then operate within the limited scope we have. You then brought up intentions again, and how that relates to judgment. I fully agree that intentions must be factored for judgment, and that mistakes due to genuine ignorance provide no merit for judgment. But ignorance due to laziness warrant their own judgment. Laziness stems from apathy. You then mentioned that many people do bad things without a desire for justice. You are correct, and I did thoughtlessly speak in that regard. Justice isn't the right word here, but rather a predictable and favorable outcome. Perhaps people occasionally truly do things out of complete selflessness. My immediate thought is that they should definitely be rewarded. Nevertheless, this still goes with my point that they have a goal in mind for their actions. If we take predictability out of the equation, we lose any reason. I disagree with you saying that people do bad things due to being broken in the brain. I'd argue that it is wicked character. They know their actions cause harm, but they do so without regard for others because it is immediately beneficial for them to do so. I suppose exceptions to this include people who are mentally incapable of reason, but such cases need to be evaluated with that in mind. And yeah, of course I agree that deficiency of the brain must be considered when dealing justice. Really, you're dealing with a lot of conjecture for the approach of justice. I can provide a limited scope of thought on the subject, but I consider these to be broader matters to address after the core points are addressed. The broader point is the wisdom in believing in justice. How it is done is the next issue. You then bring up celestial judgment warranted for apathy, in that we may do nothing when another suffers, despite having the ability to do something. Your argument from there is that a God who lets this wickedness happen deserves punishment for letting it happen. Your error is in assuming recompense cannot make up for the unjust suffering. Again, the consequence of free will is the ability to harm others. If he cannot do evil and harm others, he doesn't truly have free will. But really, this happens for the innocent's benefit. Although they unjustly suffer now, the reward will be eternal. In this way, the reward is proportional to the injustice, but scales to eternity and is much greater. In that sense, she has actually benefited from this injustice. Therefore, justice can be preserved in this context. Your point about true and false not being based on benefits is true, but you missed the whole point of my first portion. It isn't wise to consider the possibility of atheism. Wisdom is living with the assumption there is a God, in hopes that the individual pursues this knowledge over wasting their time considering other alternatives. The first point wasn't about proof, it was about wisdom. You then bring up the benefits of Mormonism, but that again misses other points made, determining who our Creator is by means of justice. We can ascertain certain moral things by basic reasoning. The rest can be ascertained by listening to the one who proves himself. I address who I believe fits in my other video, Why the God of Israel. Note, I did not say the God of the Bible. I said the God of Israel very intentionally, since it is clear that the Bible is not always just or consistent. I discussed this in my other video. You present the idea that atheism has taught you skepticism, and skepticism has benefited you in that you don't hurt from learning things like the lack of existence of a creator. This is a flawed point in that it assumes I reject skepticism altogether. But pursuing the thought that there is no justice, which requires an omnipotent judge, only leads to the natural conclusion that there is no right and wrong, and our actions are insignificant. As such, I'd argue that it is wise to present skepticism in meaningful ways. Meaningful ways such as ascertaining right and wrong, not whether it truly exists or not, which I assert is the inevitable conclusion of atheism. Nevertheless, I am not arguing against proving God. I do endorse proving everything, especially the justice of our Creator. But to say that no justice is truly administered is a pointless use of our lives, because the conclusion is that it is all insignificant. I lay out proofs at a different time. This is about wisdom, not proof. Really, I wouldn't place philosophy as a primary means of dictating truth, regardless. I can give insights, but the evidence found in prophecy greatly overshadows the evidence found in philosophy. You assert that what benefits you is absolutely crucial to your own survival. I agree that being selfish is necessary within this survival, for our survival, but our systems are not truly built upon selfishness. I agree that altruistic behavior is beneficial for society, but not that it can naturally result from evolution. The first one gained no benefits. From an evolution perspective, a significant portion of time would have had to have developed that behavior at a significant portion of the population would have had to have developed that behavior at the exact same time for it to work. Otherwise, the selfish ones gained from the selfless ones, while the sacrificial ones died supporting the selfish ones. It is like society today. Businessmen rule the world by taking advantage of others. They gain the best deal at the cost of others to gain their own advantage. Any selfless acts are actually a long-term investment, but evolution doesn't work that way. Of course, sacrificing yourself for your children is beneficial, but sacrificing yourself for a stranger is not, unless the stranger will do the same. The problem is that evolution is considered to be a very slow process. Many individuals that meet each other wouldn't develop this trait at the same time, negating the efforts of those who do. The reason I said atheism is because evolution is the default position to explain how life exists without a creator. As for being schooled by evolutionists, I welcome their explanation. I don't think I will be schooled. I am aware that survival of the fittest exists and that genes change slightly over time, but again, a gradual, slow process does not reward unreciprocated selfless actions. For them to be beneficial, excluding your own children, they have to be reciprocated. I said the first person to sacrifice themselves gained no benefit, for the simple reason that nobody else reciprocated. The first died off, and everyone else who selfishly took advantage of them gained the benefits. Community doesn't suddenly appear at once, and that is what is required for the process to work. One generation doesn't radically change from the next. You then argued, we learn morals from other people. Evolution is about genetics, not free will. A robot does exactly what it was programmed to do, and genetics do the same. The genetics responsible for sacrificial behavior only succeed if community is involved, but a community-altering gene cannot appear in one generation. The jump from selfish genetics to benevolent genetics cannot happen fast enough to take advantage of it. Your response to no beginning meaning no end was lacking, to say the least. If there was no beginning, then by definition, time is infinite. And the reason I say evolution has been debunked from a point of view is that evolution is progress. Genetics progressing, becoming more advantageous. If infinite time has already transpired, then we wouldn't see genes continually getting more sophisticated. Evolution starts with a simple organism which gets more complex over time. If there is no beginning, however, there can be no original state pointed to. One says, we have evolved over 50 billion years. There was an original creation of a single-celled organism which happened in water. When the right chemicals mixed together, it is inevitably said then, and did evolution start with after an infinite period of time? How many years did it take for this process to start? How many years until the ideal conditions happened? Surely your answer isn't infinite. There can be no start to a process if there is no beginning, and if we are progressing from the beginning then towards what? How many years did it take for the Big Bang to happen? If there is a final perfect form, I'm speaking in regards to healthy genes, then an infinite time would have produced those results already. If there was a state that is objectively better than another state, we would have already reached that point if there is no beginning. A process has to have a beginning, which cannot happen without a beginning. I suppose it is simpler to simply say this. It seems more that you were having an issue grasping my point than that your accusations were meaningful. As for the rest, my point wasn't about proof. It was about the foolishness of living a life believing there is no judge. Those who pursue the idea that there is no just judge are pursuing a foolish line of thought. Those who pursue wisdom won't consider that line of thought, since it is detrimental to any purposeful living. I saved proof for my video, Why the God of Israel. Proof of a creator is found between miracles and prophecies, but moral reason gives us a start for where to look and guidelines for what to believe about our creator. Anyhow, that is my second video responding to your rebuttal. I hope that clarifies some of the points that didn't seem to make sense to you before.